Joining me today for my persuasive speech is my girlfriend Vanessa, and over Skype, my friend Fajardo and his wife Brittany. Alright, so hello everybody. With all the gun violence affecting the nation today, Texas Governor Gregory Abbott just passed a bill into law that could potentially make law enforcement jobs all the more dangerous and add on to the amount of gun violence in the nation today. Personally, I served in the military as an infantryman for a few years, and the entire time I was surrounded by firearms and I was taught their proper use and the proper handling. And then also right now I'm double majoring as an administration of justice and political science major with the intent, after I get my degree, to go into a field into federal law enforcement. That being said, in my honest opinion, Texas's constitutional carry law is not only irresponsible, but it poses a danger to the public and law enforcement through its allowance of just about anyone to carry a firearm either openly or concealed without any prior training or any prior licensing. Now, anyone growing up here in America over the last 2 decades can tell you that they've seen an uptick in gun violence in the US, and today I wanted to cover a few things like, for one, I wanted to cover the issues that this bill causes by itself. 2, I'm going to be bringing up some counter arguments that a person of an opposing stance may have. And then lastly, I wanted to bring up maybe some better solutions to the key issues that this bill tries to address, as well as trying to change this bill so that way it's a little bit more improved. But first, let's start off with some issues that this bill itself creates. A majority of law enforcement strongly oppose this bill because it creates a bigger risk for them during their job. And in an interview with CBS Austin, Police Interim Chief Joseph Chacon stated that guns are easier to obtain than ever before, and it has become more common for people to use them. Weakening training regulation and effectively eliminating training requirements is not the direction we should be going right now. And later on in that same interview, he goes on to say that stripping away those safeguards will make streets less safe and will make law enforcement jobs harder. Another little thing I'd like to add on top of that is there is no logical and practical way for either the normal citizen or a police officer in Texas to tell if the person who is now open carrying or concealed carrying a firearm has any of the restrictions that this law lays out, and find out if there are any reason that person should not be holding that firearm. But moving on to that, I wanted to go into how it's going to cause more injuries and deaths due to accidental shootings. According to the CDC, in their report for 2019, 486 people died due to accidental gun deaths alone. And the trauma organization Aftermath, and their statistics on gun deaths written back in 2020, reported that between 2006 and 2016, 6,885 people died due to accidental gun deaths. And with restrictions being lowered and eliminated in Texas, these numbers will only seem to rise. Now that we've looked at some of the issues that this bill itself causes, I wanted to move on to some counterpoints that someone of an opposing viewpoint may bring up. But first and foremost, most Texans and Texas voters do not support the unlicensed carry and unpermitted carrying of firearms. A poll of voters done by Madison Dong for the University of Texas and Texas Tribune in 2021 found that 59% of Texas voters do not support the unlicensed and unpermitted carry of handguns. And then another argument that gets brought up a lot is that an armed citizen will be able to stop an active shooter situation, but the facts do not support this. According to the FBI's report on mass shootings in 2018, of all the mass shootings, only once did an armed citizen with a firearm stop that active shooter. But moving on from all the counter arguments that may come up, I want to talk about some better solutions that we can have to solve the issues that this bill tries to address, and maybe even change this bill itself so that way it's a better version of itself. Now, for the first way we can address this is we can try to prevent gun violence. Now, the Prevention Institute to reduce and stop gun violence suggests there's a few ways we could prevent gun violence. For one, we can include responsible gun owners and dealers in not only the conversation to come up with a solution, but in the enaction of that solution. Secondly, we can try to pass more sensible gun laws. And then lastly, we can insist on mandatory training and licensing for not only firearm owners, but anyone who wants to carry a firearm either openly or concealed. That not only will help stem and prevent gun violence, but help stem the increasing accidental death rate due to firearms. Now, when talking about changing the bill itself, the only way I can see to improve this with any change is to take a 180 from what it actually is right now, and instead of an unrestricted access to be able to carry a firearm, either openly or concealed without any training or any permit, we go the other way completely. And then we insist that if anyone wants to carry a firearm in that state, to go through mandatory training and licensing programs. Now, as a review, I've gone over the problems that this very bill creates. I've even covered some of the counter arguments that an opposing viewpoint may come up with. But most importantly, I've thrown out maybe some better solutions to the problems that it itself tries to address. And in conclusion, gun violence is such a prevalent issue in American society today that if you want to help to solve the issue, there's a couple things you can do. Some of the ways you can do this is by doing your civic duty and voting. Voting by far is the best way to affect change no matter what. You can either vote for the propositions themselves, or you can vote into people in office who will actually do something about the issue and actually hear about it. Next, you can participate in advocacy groups or activism to try to stem and prevent gun violence and fix this issue itself. Now, this can be ranging from joining one of these activism groups yourself or just raising awareness. And speaking of raising awareness, that's easier more than ever now with the access to the internet and social media, because at the tip of your finger, with just a couple keystrokes, you can share anything, anywhere, via Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat, whatever. And as always, in my audience today, I have my girlfriend Vanessa, and then over Skype joining me, I have my friend Fajardo and his wife Brittany.